Hello and welcome. Albion Online is being released on mobile today, and the player base is growing rapidly over the past few years, and I thought it would be a good idea to make a video showing off the best way to get started and skip a big chunk of the grind, setting you up for the endgame content. Now, let me throw out some caveats and answer some frequently asked questions. Some of you might be hesitant to try because of the crossplay and the fact that PC players might have an advantage, especially in PvP situations. Now, I really don't think that's true because of the way Albion PvP works, even mobile players can compete at the top level. Just look at this guy, he uploads Hellgate content while playing on his phone and winning. It's definitely doable. So if I were to make a new account, I would go about things slightly differently. This guide is intended for beginners who will very likely be kind of bad at PvP. If it were just me, I would spam stalk corrupted dungeons once I could and just farm silver and fame as it's a really good fame and silver source. But brand new players won't have that game knowledge or experience to win the PvP encounters, so we will try to make this guide very simple and accessible. Alright, step one is you make your character and make sure you do the tutorial. Doing the tutorial will give you free loot to start off with, and you get 3 days premium, which will be useful until we get our 30-day premium down the line. Alright, so fast forward into the tutorial. Once you get to the point where you can choose your tier 2 items, I suggest you go with the following setup. Pick full cloth, scholar robe, scholar cow, scholar sandals, and then I recommend the bow. But you can also pick the fire and the tome spells. You should be able to just buy it all off the market if you picked up the silver off the ground when you were killing the mobs earlier. Alright, and before you leave the area, I highly recommend buying 2 mules off of the market. The second one you need to pick up manually, and as you'll notice, you'll be overloaded and slightly slower, but that's fine because it will be worth it later. You could buy 3, but that's a little too slow for my liking. Either way, make sure you follow the tutorial, actually pay attention to what it says because it will be useful for you later on. So you kill the 10 monsters, do your thing, and then you're ready to go to the actual game. You're leaving the tutorial area. Now, as you'll see here, I was actually slightly too fast since you need 15 minutes of playtime to actually finish the tutorial, but whatever. You teleport to any city you want, doesn't really matter for now. Alright, now that we left the tutorial area, we're in the main game. By the way, make sure to decline all and any guild invites you get at this point. These are potato farm guilds with 100% tax most of the time, and they are just trying to exploit new players who don't know any better. Go to the market and sell the 2 mules for some quick freebie money. Then talk to the royal commander and pick the Welcome to Albion quest. It will lead you to get some free monies and it's pretty quick. Take the second quest, which is weird, but whatever. It's called Who Is This? It's the one you want to take. You stand for 5 seconds and then you get a free gold, which you can sell for around 3k silver. Now, that's pretty much it. We're leaving this starter area. Head to the nearest tier 3 zone. You can press M and look at the map, which zone you want to go to. And our job now is to get tier 3, basically. So you can head to one of these green dungeon areas you'll see on the map, kill some mobs until you reach tier 3. Make sure you use learning points to reach tier 3 gear, and then you can head to the closest royal city, which depends which starting area you picked when you teleported from the tutorial area. Alright, repair your stuff at the repair station and then sell everything you have and just buy tier 3 gear. Same set, depending on how much silver you have, you might also have enough to buy the tier 4 set as well, which you want to pick up a bow, you want to pick up a scholar cowl, a mage robe, and scholar sandals. If you still have silver left over, go ahead and grab a tier 2 sword, a tier 3 crossbow, a tier 3 torch, tier 4 light crossbow, and a tier 4 torch. You don't have enough money to group all of this just yet, but that's fine. You'll have enough in just a moment. Just get as many of these items as you can. Head to one of the nearby tier 4 blue zones near the royal city that you were in just now and search around the map for a solo dungeon. These green things you can click on are called solo dungeons and are intended to be cleared as a solo player. At this point, I highly recommend to read properly how your E ability works on the bow, as it will help you with getting through the dungeon. Soon you will be able to unlock tier 4 by using learning points. Go ahead and do so and then equip the better gear you purchased earlier. You will get tier 4 Reaver fairly quickly afterwards. Now you can equip the tier 2 sword and you can use the daily bonus tome once you get that one. It gives you some fame. Use the tome while wearing the tier 2 sword and you'll be able to use learning points to unlock the tier 3 crossbow, which you will be able to wear. Next, we're going to do an expedition. Do so after you reach the tier 4 Reaver. Go back to whichever city you were in, press N, and you can look for the blue portal thing. Go towards it and select the Tier 4 Expedition and complete it. It's fairly easy. You'll receive a Royal Sigil, which you can then sell at the market for around 30k. It's a big boost for us economically, so you want to make sure you do those daily, especially at the start. It's worth it for sure. All right, let's return to the market. Make sure you have all the stuff you need. So you need a tier 3 crossbow. Now you can go and buy a 4-1 crossbow, a 4-1 torch, tier 3 torch. Uh, Starting tier 4, all gear has enchantments, which is usually set with 0.1, 0.3. Represents the little dots here. It basically means how well it's enchanted. Grab a 4-1 druid robe as well. And let's go back inside a tier 4 solo dungeon. Just look around the map until you find one. It's random. Equip the tier 3 crossbow and kill some mobs until you can use learning points to level it up to tier 4. A few minutes in, you should be able to equip your light crossbow. Make sure to equip the tier 3 torch when you do as well because it's a one-handed weapon. We'll need to level up the torch as well, and once you can use learning points for that, then level up using learning points and equip the 4.1 torch as well. Now, before you do anything else, I want you to open your Destiny board, shortcut B on the keyboard, and find the crossbow node. I highly suggest clicking the auto learn button and also check the auto learn button on the top right of your screen. It's crucial. We want to level that one up to level 6 mastery as fast as possible because that will increase our clearing speed substantially as we unlock the second Q ability and the second passive. What auto learn does is basically it automatically uses learning points, so we don't have to do it each and every time as we've been doing so far. All right, so once you have everything set up, go back to the market and just buy all of your gear at 4.1. You can sell the 4.0 gear, so you just buy a 4.1k, 4.1 scholar cowl, etc. And when opening your inventory and clicking this arrow on the side of it on the left, it should show your average IP, which is item power, as above 800. And all right, next is where yours and my journey might diverge a little bit. What we want to do is leave the beginner tiers and areas as soon as possible. Doing solo dungeons in yellow zones isn't horrible, and it's pretty nice for people starting out, but the higher tier, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. Higher tier zones and higher tier dungeons provide you with more loot and more fame. Obviously, the dungeons themselves are more difficult, but that's fine. So you're a new player who's just following this video so far. You have some silver, and you have or are about to reach tier 5 Reaver. What do you do next? At the start, I highly recommend doing the daily tier 5 expedition, as I mentioned earlier. You get a free sigil, which you can sell on the market. It's pretty good. Very nice and quick silver, so they're pretty easy to do once a day. Arena is also recommended. You get some PvP experience and you get 2 tomes if you win. You can get the rewards 3 times a day. It's not horrible, and you might learn a little bit about the different weapons and different stuff. Now, there are a lot of things you can do next, and honestly, it depends on you and what you want to do. So let me go down the list, give you some suggestions, as this is a sandbox game after all. Whether you're planning on playing solo or joining a guild, corrupteds are very good. I know a lot of people hate on them, but when I was doing this challenge on a previous alt account before I was thinking about making this video, I quickly got a lot of fame and over 10 million silver in just a few hours on a brand new account, which got me premium. So now I do realize this is not realistic for a new player because new players won't be able to have such a not even like a high insane win rate, just 75%, and won't have the meta knowledge. But even then, I highly suggest doing the hunter difficulty corrupted dungeons and see if you like it. You will very likely gain very useful PvP experience, and that will be obviously very beneficial later on. The reason I suggested the builds I did so far is because the light crossbow is very strong and has the best scaling, in my opinion, into basically all the types of content. It just works for everything, whether it's PvE or PvP. And the only content it doesn't really work for is the very large scale ZVZs, which you can use different crossbows from the weapon tree once you reach that stage anyway. You can use the crossbow for every type of PvE. It's never bad, and it works for almost every PvP, as I said, except for the very massive large scale ones. Now, the normal bow, which we also have unlocked at tier 4, is strong and pretty brain dead, so you might find success with it in Corrupteds and small-scale PvP. It's pretty hard to fuck up with the bow, so also I highly suggest trying that one out. Once again, with the same build basically as the crossbow one. Very, very strong and very cheap. I highly recommend joining the Albion Online Discord. Besides it being a great place to find help and read news, there's also the guild recruitment text channel. I recommend browsing that and looking for guilds that you like. Try to find a beginner-friendly guild with low requirements. And don't worry too much about how high the tax is. Just to give you an idea, when I got to 10 mil on my alt, I only paid around 10k in taxes. And the reason for that is because the majority of your income will be from selling items you've looted and from the silver bags. But yeah, use common sense and look around until you see something you like. And if you change your mind, then that's fine too. All you have to do, worst case, you have to wait 3 days because there is a cooldown for joining guilds. Mist-based guilds aren't a bad idea because you can pop solo dungeons from there for really good and safe fame plus loot. You can also join a guild, hopefully, that does Avalonian refresh runs, so you can get a plus 10% fame buff. I won't go into the details exactly on how that works, but whichever guild you join will explain it to you, hopefully, but trust me, it's really useful. Plus 10% fame is really nice. And the final build that I suggest grinding towards is in fact the light crossbow DPS builds for Avalonian dungeons. So, but if you aren't interested in doing Avalonian dungeons, which will be hard for a beginner to join anyway, then of course you can just play whatever you want. Because honestly, this game is what you make of it. So try to join a community, make friends, do some group dungeons, try out Hellgates. There's a lot of stuff to do. However, Corrupteds are the best thing you can do at this point of the game, but when you have no fame and no silver, it all depends on whether you like the PvP aspect of it. If you just want to relax and only do the PvE, then I highly suggest enlisting and flagging up with your royal city and doing solo dungeons in a nearby tier 5 yellow zone and just keep grinding that way until you figure out what it is you want to do, which weapon you want to play, just figure things out. Now, I won't go into any long-term investments or long-term goals to work towards, but I will say this. Try out all the different weapons and try out all the different roles and all the different content. Maybe you end up enjoying gathering or crafting and you don't really like the PvE or PvP. That's fine as well. Just try things out, see which playstyle and content suits you, and then you can commit to that and specialize in it. I highly suggest though, join a newbie friendly guild that will teach you the ropes. I highly recommend buying premium at least for the first month with real money until you get enough silver and a good economy going, and then you should be able to easily buy premium with in-game currency from that point on. If this video gets enough interest, I'll very likely make a part 2 that will go into more detail on the mid-game content and like intermediate tutorials and tips. But for now, let me give you the most important tips I can think of. Number 1, learn how bubble mechanics work. Whenever you enter a zone, you have a bubble. Just zone into the black zone naked and play around with it, zoning back and forth, because trust me, this knowledge is very useful and might end up in you dying when you could have easily avoided it. So to check it out. It's also different for hideouts if you ever walk inside one. So test it, play around with it. Look under your debuffs. Number 2, keep in mind that gear is expendable. One thing you will learn in this game is to never get too attached to your gear. Treat your silver balance and gear as a bankroll. You should never put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. This MMO is full loot, so keep that in mind. Number 3, and this is my pet peeve, most common, is there's no best build in general in Albion. This is a common question people ask, like, what is the best healer build? It seems like a good question to ask, but no, it's actually a pretty bad question. There's a link in the description below to a long post I did explaining this in more detail, but basically in Albion, you change your gear based on the situation. So certain gear and abilities which are good in a 1v1 scenario are generally horrible in a group setting, and vice versa. So when I was saying light crossbow is one of the best weapons because of how versatile it is, that doesn't mean you can just show up with the same build and same abilities for everything. Here, you can see just a few examples for how you would adjust your build and abilities. Number 4, similarly to the last point, make sure you actually understand how gear works in this game. There are no classes in this game. There is no set bonus or anything like that. I usually ride around town and inspect people on the way, and I very often see new players wearing stuff like full guarding gear, or a guy with Galatine pair wearing full demon gear. Now, you might be wondering, okay, why is this bad? Well, let's just think about it. Galatine is an AoE burst weapon for large scale fights. Let's take a look. Demon Helmet is a silenced, single target silence. Demon Armor is an AoE protective tool. And Demon Boots isn't really horrible, but doesn't quite fit. So as you can see, the build just doesn't really make sense. You have a tanking armor and a burst weapon. Doesn't really make sense. Different armors provide different bonuses. So Cloth is squishy without much defensives, but a lot of damage and healing. Meanwhile, Plate is the opposite. It has a lot of defenses, but almost zero damage and healing. So jackets are somewhere in the middle, but hopefully this gives you a rough idea. Tanks almost always wear plate armor, and healers almost always wear cloth, and so on. It just makes sense stat-wise. Number 5, in terms of fame farming, if you want to fame up healing or tanking roles, you pretty much need to play with a group for that to be effective, because clearing solo dungeons in tanking and healing sets is pretty slow, and I don't recommend it. It's really not fun. So if you're planning on playing either of those, then you're actually trolling if you don't join a guild. I highly recommend it. Number 6, make use of the /help channel in game. Most people don't even know this exists, but it's pretty useful. You can type there if you have any questions. If you're in game, you should get help fairly quickly. And last but definitely not least is the misconception that you have to craft your own gear. As you could see earlier throughout the video when we did the tutorial, most of the gear we just bought it off the market. I remember when I first started playing the game, I spent way too long in blue and yellow zones, and I had the misconception that I needed to gather, refine, and then craft everything myself. So basically, my progress was incredibly slow. You can gather whenever and just sell whatever you gather for profit, but if we're talking about refining or crafting or doing islands, I highly suggest leaving that until you have more experience and more capital to work with. Crafting especially requires a small level of investment. Some people will argue how much of an investment you really need, but you definitely need some sort of investment until you see profit. Obviously, it depends what you're crafting, but more on that another video perhaps. And that's it for this video. There's a lot of stuff I didn't cover, but it's stuff you'll figure out on your own as you play the game, hopefully. There's a lot of stuff to do, but really, it's a sandbox game. So just do what you want, do what you find fun, do what you find enjoyable. This was aimed towards beginners, but I might end up making a part 2 to this, which would cover more intermediate stuff. Leave a rating and comment if you have feedback, it'd be much appreciated, and subscribe for more Albion online content. Hope you have a good one.